Attention today, Chinese water cannon damages ship in new South China Sea flare-up. Philippines says China's Coast Guard fired water cannons that damaged a Philippine vessel on Tuesday, marking the latest flare-up of violence between the two countries in the disputed South China Sea, Philippine authorities said. The Philippine Coast Guard said the incident occurred as one of its ships and a fisheries agency vessel carried out a legitimate patrol near Scarborough Shoal, a Chinese-controlled rocky outcrop 130 miles, 200 kilometers, west of the main Philippine island of Luzon and inside Manila's exclusive economic zone. Video supplied by the Philippine Coast Guard showed two larger Chinese vessels firing water cannons from opposite sides of the Philippine ship. The Philippine vessels encountered dangerous maneuvers and obstruction from 4 China Coast Guard vessels and 6 Chinese maritime militia vessels. Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson Commodore J. Terrila said in the statement. The Philippine Coast Guard ship suffered damage to the railing and canopy, according to its statement. No injuries were reported. In a post on social platform Weibo Tuesday, the China Coast Guard said it had expelled the Philippine vessels for intruding into the waters, in accordance with the law. Beijing asserts ownership over almost all of the South China Sea in defiance of an international court ruling. Over the past 2 decades, China has occupied a number of obscure reefs and atolls far from its shoreline across the South China Sea, building up military installations, including runways and ports. Scarborough Shoal, which China calls Huangjin Island and is also known as Bajo de Masinloc, is a small but strategic reef and fertile fishing ground. There are no structures on the shoal, but China has maintained a continuous Coast Guard presence around it since 2012, according to the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative. The Philippines also said Tuesday that China had reinstalled the 380-meter (1,247 feet) floating barrier that covers the entire entrance of the shoal, effectively restricting access to the area. Scarborough Shoal is one of several disputed islands and reefs in the South China Sea, which have long been a flashpoint of territorial disputes between the two nations. The ship is now mostly a rusted wreckage and is staffed by Marines stationed on rotation. Following that incident, the China Coast Guard said on Weibo it had taken control measures in accordance with the law against the Philippine vessels, which it said had illegally entered the waters adjacent to Renau Reef, as Beijing calls Second Thomas Shoal. Earlier in March, Chinese water cannon hit a Philippine resupply boat as it headed to Second Thomas Shoal, shattering windows and injuring 4 Filipino sailors. Beijing and Manila's South China Sea disputes have heated up since the 2022 election of Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who has taken a stronger line against China than his predecessor, Rodrigo Duterte. The clashes have also raised fears they could lead to a wider conflict as Manila maintains a mutual defense treaty with the United States, which Washington says covers Philippine vessels in the disputed waterway. On other media, Philippines alleges China damaged vessel in South China Sea disputed shoal. Manila says its Coast Guard ship was damaged after being hit by water cannon. Beijing says it expelled Philippine boats. The Philippines has accused China of dangerous maneuvers and obstruction and reinstalling a barrier at the disputed Scarborough Shoal, which Beijing blockaded and seized from Manila in 2012. Philippine Coast Guard PCG spokesman J. Terrila said 2 Philippine vessels on maritime patrol encountered 4 China Coast Guard CCG ships and 6 vessels from its maritime militia in the area on Monday morning. One of the ships was struck by water cannon from one of the CCG ships about 12 nautical miles, 22 kilometers from the shoal, while the other, a PCG vessel, was hit by water cannon fired from 2 of the CCG ships when it was about 1,000 yards, 914 meters away from the shoal, which the Philippines calls Bajo de Masinloc. Writing on social media platform X, Terrila said the ship's railing and canopy were damaged. A video accompanying the post showed water cannon hitting the port side of the boat as well as the starboard side closer to the bow. This damage serves as evidence of the forceful water pressure used by the China Coast Guard in their harassment of the Philippine vessels, he wrote. On Tuesday, Beijing claimed it had expelled Philippine vessels from the area, a traditional fishing ground that also provides shelter in stormy weather. Terrila said China had also reinstalled a barrier about 415 yards, 380 meters, long across the entrance to the shoal, which lies about 220 kilometers, 137 miles, off the coast of the Philippines and within its exclusive economic zone, EEZ. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, an EEZ extends some 200 nautical miles, about 370 kilometers, from a country's coast. China first installed the barrier last year, but the Philippines removed it in September, saying it breached international maritime law. The Philippines and China have been involved in multiple incidents in and around the disputed reef in the South China Sea, which Beijing claims almost in its entirety under a 9-dash line that an international tribunal ruled in 2016 to be without merit. Manila took its case to the tribunal after China seized Scarborough Shoal more than a decade ago. China has ignored the ruling and continued to press its claim. Brunei, Malaysia, and Vietnam also claim the parts of the sea around their coasts.